I think there's so many powerful people that are on those lists. There's so many powerful people that went and partied. Air quotes, partied. And how many of them went to the Diddy parties? Have you been paying attention to the trial?
Oh, yeah.
Trials. Wild.
Diddy Combs has been denied bail in connection with the sexual abuse and sex trafficking charges he faces. And as Les Trent reports, the music mogul who once traveled by private jet to all those mansions is now in a jail that is notorious for its bad living conditions.
On the 23rd of July, 2024, something happened inside Fort Dix Federal Correctional Facility that wasn't supposed to happen. A man who once controlled the music industry, who threw parties on private islands, who shaped the sound of hip-hop, was placed in solitary confinement. But this wasn't a random prison incident. This was the collision of two timelines, 30 years apart, finally crashing into each other. And that's when people started asking the question that nobody wanted to ask out loud. Was this about what he allegedly did inside those prison walls? Or was this about what he allegedly did 30 years ago? Let's be clear about what we know. Sean Diddy Combs, currently serving a 4-year federal sentence handed down by Judge Arun Subramanian, was moved to solitary confinement on July 23rd. The official story was an altercation with another inmate, but the streets were saying something different. They were saying that Diddy didn't just get into a fight, he got into a fight for a reason.
Well, I got a phone call yesterday that Diddy was placed in solitary confinement because he a man. I was told, literally, the phone call was, hey, Diddy choked the man out. He was placed in solitary confinement yesterday, July 23rd, around 4 o'clock p.m. And he'll be there for at least 30 days is what I was told. I reached out to Diddy's team. At the time, they knew I was calling, but they still trying to figure it out. They said that they don't know either way, but they didn't dispute my phone call.
What happened, though?
So all that I know and all that was mentioned to me, I don't know every detail. Literally, though, I said why. They said, sometimes people think that they can play with him. And I don't know if it's because of all of the reporting around the case or if it's because he's a big celebrity and, they think that he's used to being like protected. But I was told people think that they can play with him. And we've told people don't think that. And
I told people 1,000,001 times.
Yesterday, he had to demonstrate. Allegedly.
I mean, we laugh at Diddy and all that, but Diddy's not. I've seen Diddy grab people, yoke people up in clubs, like with security there. Diddy's no. Like Diddy's, he's with all the ish.
Claiming that his throat was nearly in prison. According to Diddy, he was asleep in his cell and he woke up to a man standing over him with a shank at his throat. It's important to understand that this incident was not an attempted. If this person wanted to Diddy, he never even would have seen it coming until he was bleeding out of his throat. This was a warning, and this was a mark of things to come for Diddy.
According to multiple sources close to the situation, Diddy choked an inmate out, not a random scuffle. A deliberate confrontation that left guards with no choice but to isolate him for at least 30 days. But here's where it gets strange. The reports came back clear. His legal team didn't challenge the incident. They didn't claim he was defending himself. They didn't create a narrative of innocence, and that silence told a story all by itself. Because if your client is facing a 4-year sentence, the last thing you want is additional infractions adding time to his sentence. Unless, and this is the critical part, unless the alternative was far worse, and the streets were talking loud. The inmate who got choked out, according to whispers that Joe Rogan amplified across his platforms, wasn't just running his mouth about random prison drama. People who follow these cases closely were saying something much more specific. That inmate knew things about old files that had been buried since 1996. But this is where things get strange. To understand why an inmate confrontation in 2024 could possibly connect to events from 1996, we have to go back. We have to understand what the streets were like when hip-hop was exploding, when money was flowing, when friendships were forged between 3 men who would become legends. Back in the mid-1990s, Tupac Shakur, Sean Diddy Combs, and the notorious B.I.G. weren't enemies. They were friends. Young talents shaping the sound of an entire generation. People still remember that 1993 freestyle between Big and Shakur. Footage exists. They looked great together. The chemistry was real. These weren't manufactured rivalries. These were genuine connections between artists who respected each other's craft.
You ready, nigga? Yeah. Ready for that raw dog? I'm on the underground, man. Okay, all right. Let me see how I'm gonna hit you with. You wanna set it off? Yeah, I'm scared to do some freestyle. I'm scared to do some freestyle. No, I'm too high and I might go off tempo, but now I'm back to let these know. But now I'm about to pass this mother Uncle, Tangerine, Diddy.
But somewhere along the way, the relationship morphed. And when it did, it didn't just turn into a typical music industry beef. It transformed into one of the most explosive rivalries hip-hop had ever seen. East Coast versus West Coast. Death Row Records versus Bad Boy Entertainment. And when you have that much money, that much ego, and that much at stake, rivalries don't stay confined to diss tracks and interviews. They sometimes spill into violence. And that's when people started noticing something unusual. In September 1996, Tupac Shakur was in Las Vegas. The entire industry froze when news came through of the shooting. For years afterward, nobody was charged. The case became a legend that people talked about endlessly but never solved. Documentaries were made, books were written, conspiracy theories spread through the streets and across the internet like a disease that wouldn't die. And that's exactly what it became, a mystery that never closed. It stayed open, it festered, but in 2023, nearly 30 years later, something changed. A man named Dwayne Keith D. Davis was finally indicted in connection with Tupac's death.
Well, in fact, there was the rumor that after Pac got killed, Puffy gave Zip $1 million that was supposed to be handed over, and Zip ended up keeping it. And I remember when I interviewed TK Kirkland, who was actually roommates with Zip at one point. They were that close. He actually said, yeah.
The feds said that too.
He said that shit actually happened. Well, the story that has circulated was that after Tupac got killed, Puffy allegedly gave the money,
I heard,
to Zip.
Yes.
And Zip was supposed to give the money to Keefe and them.
Yes.
But he never gave the money to him.
But thank God he never gave him the money, right? Think about it. If he gave the money, Puffy would be in prison now, money for hire, a murder for hire. So thank God. It's just a true story. I'm not saying yes or no, but if he would have gave them the money, it'd have been a murder for hire and Puffy would be locked up.
Yeah, I said he's a dirty motherfucker.
Yeah, and he even said that, like, in retrospect, that was probably the best thing that could have ever happened to Puffy. By Zip stealing the money, now Puffy isn't connected to that shit. Or else it would have been like a murder for hire or something, you know what I'm saying?
The FBI said Zip.
So the FBI told you the
said
same
he was
thing.
a dirty motherfucker, yeah.
So the FBI told you that Zip kept that money as well.
They said Zip's a dirty motherfucker. Everybody cross you. You're the last one to know every fucking thing. Even lawyers, your friends, everybody can cross your ass. You just don't know. Even the dudes you was riding in the car with every day, like a LoJack.
And the moment that indictment went public, old stories came rushing back to life. Stories that people thought were buried. Stories that connected the case directly to Diddy.
There's also, you go into the book, that apparently there was supposed to be $1 million that Zip was supposed to bring back, but he ended up keeping the money and buying a nightclub with it.
That's what the FBI said.
The FBI said that. Yeah.
Now, Detective Russell Poole had been suspicious about the circumstances surrounding Tupac's death for decades. Poole suspected that Suge Knight, Tupac's label boss at Death Row Records, had arranged Tupac's murder before he could exit the label. But what's critical here is the reasoning. Poole believed Suge wanted to frame the Crips Tupac's supposed gang rivals to throw detectives off the actual investigation. But when you really examine Suge Knight's story about what happened that night, things start falling apart.
Suspects or motive in the murder of rapper and actor Tupac Shakur, who died last Friday the 13th after being gunned down in a drive-by following the Mike Tyson-Bruce Seldon boxing match September 7th. Meanwhile, on Thursday night in Los Angeles, we spoke with Marion Suge Knight, head of Tupac's label Death Row Records, and the man who was driving the car sitting right next to Tupac when he was shot. Knight, who himself was grazed in the head by a bullet, was prevented by his lawyers from addressing the shooting itself. But here, for the first time on television, he speaks publicly about its aftermath.
Let me just finish, Suge, by asking you this. You were there when one of the all-time most famous music icons was. You were sitting next to him. What was the last thing that Tupac said to you?
Well, the crazy thing about it, nobody followed us, nobody came, nobody come to help. And as we sitting there, I looking at him, he looking at me. I said, man, look, we ain't gonna go straight ahead this way to the hospital. I'm gonna do a U-turn, and we gonna go to the hospital off of Las Vegas Boulevard. He said, why? I said, because it's more lights and more people. And he said, well, let me drive. I said, I'm driving. He said, man, you bleeding all through your head. You can't see, I can see.
According to Suge, after Tupac was shot multiple times in the chest and torso, he still had conversations with him in the hospital. He claimed they were laughing and joking. He said Tupac was doing well, recovering nicely, and they left the hospital in good spirits. But police reports told a completely different story. Tupac was in a very deep sleep, practically unresponsive. There's no way Suge was having extended conversations with him. There's no way they were laughing together. The medical reality contradicts the narrative. And when a witness's story contradicts the evidence, investigators start asking harder questions. And this raised even more questions. Because if Suge was lying about something that basic, what else was he lying about? Now here's where the investigation takes a turn that people don't talk about enough. According to Joe Rogan and sources connected to ongoing investigations, Diddy allegedly had his eye on Tupac's girlfriend. And it wasn't just casual interest. It was obsessive. Her name was Sarah Chapman. Tupac dated her in 1995. By 2006, she had a daughter with Diddy Chance Combs. Diddy described Sarah as the one. He called her his dream girl. Think about the timeline here. Tupac is dead. Sarah moves on. Sarah ends up in Diddy's circle. Diddy establishes a family with Tupac's ex. And according to what's been whispered in investigative circles, this connection mattered. Because jealousy, especially the kind that involves a woman, can be a powerful motivator. Some people are saying the first attempt on Tupac's life was connected to this, that the initial hit failed, and that led to something even more serious. But what happened next confused everyone. A former detective began connecting dots that had been scattered for 3 decades. This investigator suggested that Diddy had paid someone a significant amount of money to take care of Tupac. The amount being floated was $1 million.
Where's the videos? They were telling us that videos are going to come out, incredibly high-profile people doing horrendous things, evil things. People are going to go to jail. People are going to be shocked.
Yeah.
Where?
Right.
Nothing.
Well, like,
zero.
My thing about the Diddy thing is like, I don't really give a fuck. These people are they're of age. They're like 18 years old. And is it shitty what he's doing, trying to like use people and leverage them into do these weird sexual things and like sick shit, just the most sick shit you could possibly think of. But like the way I look at it is these people are using this Diddy stuff. All it does is like take away from the real child trafficking that's going on with like underage kids, right? There's like what 300,000 something like missing kids. Like talking about Diddy and his oil parties with these 18-year-olds, like do I think it's good? No. I want to beat up their dad, but other than that, I don't really give a fuck if there's like 18 to 19-year-olds that are doing this stuff, as long as they're not being like actually like physically raped. But I mean, it seems like what's going on is just like this weird cultish thing where they slowly get creep closer and closer and closer to this thing. Like, oh, I'm here now. All these famous people are here. They're doing this. Like
elaborate parties,
yeah.
Lots of money, everything you want. The golden carrot at the end of the stick.
Right.
So the thing is, he's not even being charged for any of the things you just brought up. He's not being charged for blackmail, which is kind of crazy. Because what did they do? Why did they tell us that there was all these videos of all these high-profile people and then silence, and then it never comes up once during the trial?
And according to street whispers that have now been documented by multiple sources, that payment allegedly went to someone named Dwayne Keith D. Davis. This is critical. Keith D., in police interrogations across multiple locations, San Diego, Anaheim, Irvine, Las Vegas, allegedly told investigators about conversations with Puffy.
He has landed himself in solitary confinement after getting into a prison fight with another inmate. We're being told that this inmate dissed Diddy. So pushing started, and then there was punches thrown. So I guess the prison guards immediately broke it up.
I hope he at least won the fight.
Well, according to our prison sources, and yes, we have them, Diddy held his own during the fight.
What does that mean, that he didn't lose the fight but didn't win it?
It means he didn't have to go to the hospital ward?
It doesn't sound like he dragged the guy, though. It sounds like he just survived.
But they threw him into the hole. For how long? We cannot say.
Will this affect him getting out? Because he's supposed to get out in February 2028.
Pretty sure, unless they determine that he was attacked. Here's the problem that Diddy has now is that it's happened once. So now
he's a target.
Now there's going to be a bunch of other tough guys lined up because you make a name for yourself.
But Fort Dix doesn't really look like that hard of a prison, right?
Really? How much time do you think you could do at Fort Dix? It doesn't seem that tough.
I'd be all right. Are you kidding? You'd be spit roasted.
They'd be lined up, man. They would be lined up.
You would be a sweet treat in prison.
We'll see you around the yard, Diddy. Soon as you're out of confinement.
In those conversations, according to what's been reported, the discussion centered on Tupac, and Keith D suggested that it was about both of them, not just Tupac, both Diddy and Tupac. Now fast forward back to the 23rd of July, 2024. Diddy is at Fort Dix. It's a low-security federal facility where inmates have significant interaction time. That means old scores can surface. That means old knowledge can be shared. That means someone could mention something they shouldn't have mentioned. According to multiple sources connected to the investigation, the inmate who got choked out was allegedly running his mouth about the old Tupac files. The same files that documented the $1 million offer. The same files that named Diddy. And if that wasn't enough, that inmate was also allegedly bringing up Diddy's alleged connections to the Epstein network. Now, remember what we know about the Epstein network. It was a system of elite circles that moved young talent through protected spaces, closed-door environments, alleged power plays, and the silencing of people who knew too much. Some people are now claiming that Diddy and Epstein moved in similar elite circles, that their parties overlapped, that their access to young people and to systems of protection was comparable. But this is where the situation became even more suspicious. If that inmate at Fort Dix understood pieces of a larger picture, if he knew about Tupac, about the money trail, about who ordered what back in 1996, and if he was connecting that knowledge to current investigations into Epstein-adjacent networks, then choking him out suddenly looks like something other than random prison violence. It looks like protection. It looks like damage control. It looks like someone protecting old secrets from being exposed by someone who should have kept his mouth shut. And that's exactly what Joe Rogan has been suggesting. That the investigation into Diddy didn't start with the recent RICO charges. It started with Tupac. It's been building for decades. And the incident at Fort Dix wasn't a breakdown of discipline. It was the collision of a 30-year-old investigation finally catching up to the present. Prosecutors need one thing to break this open: proof, a money trail, evidence of who paid what and when, documentation of conversations, someone willing to testify.
Keith D claims that there is this ongoing conversation. It happens on 3 different occasions. But most specifically when he and Puffy are at this place called Greenblatt's Deli on Sunset. And they're there, things have spiraled out of control. Puffy's really concerned about, the welfare of his safety. And he tells Keith D, man, I just need you to take care of this situation with Suge and Tupac. It's out of control. And he says, I just need you to take care of him. And Keith D's like, that's no problem. That's what we do. And so an agreement was made, according to Keith D, for an amount of money. And they kind of just let it go at that point in time. But of course, Keith D knows in the back of his mind, this is what Puffy wants done. And they all end up out in Las Vegas. But of course, when we interview Keith D, he's like, yeah, that's what the agreement amount was, $1 million.
So according to Keith, he's claiming that Puffy offered him $1 million to Suge or Tupac?
Both
or
of them.
Both.
Yeah, both their names came up. And according to Keith D, he says, Tupac's put himself on the list by all the talking that he was doing. But it was really about Suge because it was Suge's muscle.
If investigators can trace that financial thread back to 1996, the entire story changes. If they can't, Tupac's death remains one of hip-hop's greatest unsolved mysteries. But what we know is this: the past just collided with the present inside Fort Dix, and Diddy got moved to solitary because of it.